This is the Samaritan. It's Hellboy's hand cannon. It's also one of my very favorite movie props. And I had a chance to see the original at the LACMA a couple years ago at a Del Toro exhibit, and it was just extraordinary to see it in person. This kit is from my friend Harrison and his team over at Volpin Props. They put these together and had a limited run last year, and I couldn't throw money at the screen fast enough to get one for myself. Finally excited to put it together. This thing is gorgeous. It is a dream kit. It looks so good, and it's one of my favorite movie props. I'm stoked. I'm sure you've got a dream prop or a dream kit that you've been wanting to put together for years, and I want to know about it. Please let me know down in the comments what your dream prop kit would be. This one, I'm just so excited. They even vacuum formed a little holder for all the hardware. And this might be my favorite part. The instructions are made up to look like IKEA instructions. And they're perfect, and I love them so much. I'm keeping this. Like, this is just as important as the rest of it. Oh, yep, and there was another little addition there. Of course, heat sealed and everything. Just way to over-deliver, Harrison. All right, I think we'll start with the bullets. Here's our 22 millimeter bullet casing. And I need to do a little bit of work and clean up before it's ready. But also these parts and some of the other parts have been cold cast. So there is a fine metallic powder, and I can use steel wool to gently buff it and get a very authentic metallic finish. I'll probably go over this with some metal polish later as well. The takeaway though is that this finish is very fragile, and I need to be careful not to chew through it if I sand it or if I'm handling this with any tools. So I want to be careful as I work on these. But yes, I do need to trim off some of the sprues. Got my bandsaw here, but I think the safest way for my fingers is just to do it the old-fashioned way. Got it in the vise and cut it by hand. Yeah. There's just a little bit of the sprue left on there, and these guys as well. I gotta sand it right down to that line very carefully. I could use the belt sander for this, but I'm worried I'd take too much off too quickly. Before, after. Now they can match up nicely. Looking very sharp there, little bullet buddy. The bullets in the movie glow green, and I suspect that's some sort of magic. I don't have magic, but I have the next best thing, green LEDs. I got these because they're 3 to 3.2 volts, which means I can take 2 of these 1.5 volt batteries to power it. There we go, just like that. Nice and green, and that's gonna look really cool in the bullet. Of course, this is not terribly elegant, so I did some homework, did a little 3D modeling and 3D printing, and I made these little housings, I guess, for the LEDs and the batteries. I'll drill a hole in here to set that down in there. This is my prototype. It does not work anymore. I monkeyed with it too much, but there's an LED, there's a spot for batteries, and then there's magnets. And 2 of these are soldered to wires that connect to the battery chamber, and then 2 of the magnets on the top have a wire connecting them so that they complete the circuit. And I can turn it to turn the light off and turn it to turn the light on. That's what should happen anyway. This one doesn't work anymore. But I have more that I printed for the rest of the bullets, so let's put these together. Since I'm using these really tiny little magnets as my connections, I gotta make sure I have the polarity correct. There we go, I'm magneting it down here. I'm gonna solder this really thin wire onto my magnets, and then I'll install it in the little plastic part. I'm going for this effect here on my little magnet. You can see the polarity is correct, and I'm checking all of those as I solder them to make sure they don't go wrong. And then I want to put a little bit of solder right on the back of that magnet quickly. The heat from this can demagnetize the magnet. Quick, little dot, a little bit, maybe a little more. That's probably enough. Like I said, that will make this magnet a little bit weaker, but from my testing, it still worked just fine. My wire is this super thin 28 gauge wire, and I need to sand the coating off the end a little bit so that I can put some solder on it. That's enough. I'm gonna pre-tin the end of that. There we go, that should stick nicely. I'm gonna use the little pliers here to bend the end of this 90 degrees, and that's what I'll attach there. And just give it a quick touch. Whoop. The magnet wants to pull the soldering iron down, go figure. Well, there we go. I should do it a little better than that. Nope. Quit while you're ahead, Bill, that looks fine. Ta-da! To install the magnets here, they're kind of a press fit, so I put them on a piece of metal where they're gonna hang out, and then hopefully I can line these up and press them in. There we go. I wanna make sure that they end up flat and flush with one another. That looks nice. Now these are the other magnets that don't have wires on them. They are facing the same direction, which is fabulous. And I can just turn this 90 degrees and press those in. And hopefully all of these magnets are flush and level with one another. They look pretty good. But if they don't protrude a little bit, the electrical connection won't work. So I'm just gonna make sure those are nice and flush. To keep those in there, I'm just gonna use a tiny little bit of super glue. And then on these wires, I'll put some hot glue as well for strain relief. They're really tiny and can snap very easily. There we go. The other sets of magnets are going in this piece, and I've checked and double checked that I'm installing them in the correct orientation. And those also just get pressed in there. Also nice and flush, and I will also glue those in. Actually, I need to solder those. I probably don't want the glue in the way. Let's solder that first, then I'll glue everything. I am soldering this tiny little wire to that tiny little magnet. I'm trying very hard not to melt the plastic. It's technically on there. We'll test and make sure that works. That's what we're going for there. Next is our LED, which goes right in there, and then one of these gets wrapped around it. Oop! You chill. I'll just solder that. Gotta let it burn through that coating a little bit. Should have sanded it. Shouldn't need the rest of this. There we go. I will need another wire on here though. I'm adding another lead to the other lead on the LED there, and then these two wires can go to the battery. Of course, just a little more hot glue to hold that LED in place and keep these tiny thin wires from snapping. This little contraption that I've put together can get fed into the casing, and these will get bent over to connect to the batteries. I'm going to trim them to length now because I have to sand the ends of them, so I'm going to take them out and do that. This is all now going to go in there permanently. Coming on out like that. This lid should fit right in, perfect. These little tabs can be folded down so that they connect with the battery. One in there, and one in there, and they just get held in with friction. Oh wait, I have to put this part on. Okay, clearly I have a couple of kinks to work out. I have found that getting these and these to match up perfectly is very difficult. I'm cleaning up these magnets here. I also want to make sure that there isn't any plastic that's higher than the magnet. And then, hey, our light works. I also found it works best if you put the batteries in correctly. I had to flip those around. Man, that's bright. That is exactly what we're looking for. I need to sand this flush, and then we can install this in our bullet. This guy needs to go on the bullet, right around there. So I'm gonna be a total professional and eyeball it. Just to be sure, I'm gonna drop a little of the accelerant in there to cure that and let it dry completely. While that's drying, I can drill out a cavity for that little assembly. I'm putting tape on the casting here because I don't want the clamp that I'm going to use to hold this to scratch up that surface. So this is a protective measure. Then I'm going to use a Forstner bit to hog that out down to a certain depth. And I've already got that measured over at the drill press. I have my vise set up here, and I have a piece of wood down there to hold this at the appropriate height. And I have these plastic V-groove jaws to hold it in place. And I also set up this tape as a flag to tell me I only want to go that deep. I don't want to accidentally drill a hole all the way through it. All right, everything's set up. Let's do this. All right, good start. I'll keep going, but I'm going to set up the dust collection to pull all this away. Go. You can see the plastic jaws dug into the tape a tiny bit, but the surface is undamaged. Let's see if our lighting thing wants to fit in there. It does. That's snug, like that. I think I need to drill the hole a tiny bit deeper. Let's see. Yep, that fits, but there's a little gap. So if I go about 1/16 of an inch deeper, I should be good. Drilled that a little deeper. That looks better. All right, now the moment we've all been waiting for. That can't be right. Hold on. No. No. Oh, here we go. Let's see. Oh, no. That does make much more sense. Thanks, Harrison. Hey, there it goes. Wow. It looks just like it's out of the movie. Now I can install my glowing bullets. And the last one. Whoop. How cool is that? Wow. Still lots of work to do. At some point I got to buff the cold cast finish on this. But next I think all of my resin parts need a little bit of paint. These castings are really good, super, super good. But before I can prime and then paint these parts, there's a little bit of cleanup work to do on some of the seams. Now I want to show you the seam. It's actually kind of hard to see because it's so faint, but there is definitely a line right down there. And it goes all the way around the part, this seam line right there. And I want to sand that nice and flush. But when they designed the molds for this, they put the lines in spots that are easy to clean up and easy to hide. You'll hardly ever see these surfaces in here. And then some of the seam edges follow the edge of the geometry right there. Now you can see it actually goes down to what must have been the pouring spout where they poured the liquid in. This area right here will actually be covered later when the handle is installed. So if there's any imperfections, we'll never see them. The handle, actually, this resin cast handle, I'm gonna set that aside for now. I have a special plan for that. Here's a pretty good example. There's a little bit of the seam showing there. And I want to start with a file, a little metal needle file, to clean that up as smoothly as possible. This is rigid. It's not going to wrap around it as I go. And it's very efficient at removing material quickly. This won't be the last step, but I'm really just trying to get rid of the trench where that seam was. And I'm not in a hurry here. I'm just taking away a little material each time. Once I get it where the seam is mostly gone, I can go over with some sandpaper. I'll start with like 400 grit here and just sand everything nice and smooth. Now, if that trench is too deep and it needs more work, you could use a filler to fill it in, or you could get much more aggressive with your sandpaper. I would rather not. I'm gonna treat this kit very gently, but you can see how the seam is almost completely gone there. That's what we're going for. Most of the seams on here, though, are so faint that this 400 grit sandpaper is all I need. Seems to be taking care of almost all of it. So I'll just go over all the parts, look for any spots that need a little bit of cleanup, sand them with this, and if I need a little more oomph, I can use my needle files. This is gonna be really good. One more step, a couple more steps actually, but I really want to make sure the surface is nice and uniform. Some of the spots are still the bare resin, and I want to make sure that it's got a little bit of tooth for that primer to grab onto, and everything is nice and smooth. So I'm just going over every exposed surface with this Scotch-Brite pad to give it a little bit of a buffing. Once I'm happy with that, I can clean this part to make sure there's no more dust or fingerprints or grease on there, and I've got a wax remover, grease and wax remover. A little bit on my paper towel, and then everything just gets a nice rub down. You could also use like isopropyl alcohol if you don't have this wax and grease remover. I'm also wearing rubber gloves so that I don't remove any finger grease and then immediately put it back on there. This piece is ready to go. Go on my little stand here, along with all of the other parts that I got ready for primer. That primer is just going to be a rattle can off the shelf, but I did put it in a bucket of warm water to warm it up a little bit. That should help have a nice fine mist of primer when I paint all of these. That looks so nice. Yeah. Tiny little piece. This is the handle that came with the kit, and like the rest of the kit, it's gorgeous. But I want to try something fancy and recreate it using real wood. The wood is a piece of Padauk. There were only a couple of options at the wood store that were the right size that I could fit a whole handle in. And I thought this was the closest looking to the one I saw at the Del Toro exhibit, the real one. So I went with that. And then to start roughing it out, I traced the profiles of my handle, the side and rear and front, which is actually the same, so that I can hopefully get a rough cut in 2 axes on this to get the shape started. We'll see how it goes. tough. All right. I'm just sort of doing the last bit of, hopefully the last bit of sanding on this. I have some 220 grit, smoothing everything out. I got mostly everything fitting really well. These little medallions fit pretty well. I could have done a better job, but I don't do a lot of wood carving like this, and it's challenging. Definitely, learned a lot. The wood, which by the way, this used to look like this. Pretty cool, right? I have made a ton of progress, but when they say hardwood, they mean like crazy hard. Gummed up all my sanding tools and my saw. So yeah, hardwood. Beautiful. Difficult to work with. Anyway, I'm just doing this last bit of sanding here, getting everything ready to do the finishing work. And I'm really excited to put some finish on this gorgeous Padauk. I played bass for gorgeous Padauk. To do the finishing on this piece of wood here, I'm going to use a linseed oil and beeswax polish. This is from my friend Lynn over at Darbin Orvar. It's a really easy finish. I'm just going to wipe it on there and transform this into something really gorgeous. This is a magic trick that woodworkers get to do that I never get to do, and it looks so cool. Look at how red it is. While I'm applying this, actually, I'd like to remind you that we've got a really wonderful store over at punishprops.com with a bunch of great stuff. Actually, if you want to do a kit like this, like a blaster of some kind, I've got 3D print files for the Blade Runner gun that I made a while ago. You could buy it, download it, print your own kit, put it together and paint it, and it'll look amazing. Actually, if you want a good primer on painting props, my buddy Harrison, same guy that made this kit over at Volpin Props, he's got a phenomenal book on painting. The ebook is available also over at punishprops.com if you want to get a head start on some painting techniques. There's also a bunch of other wonderful stuff over there. Of course, the Foamsmith books, both print and digital. And we have merch like this super cool Punish Props Academy hoodie I'm wearing. We have new knives that we just put in the store that are phenomenal. A bunch of other really wonderful goodies over at punishprops.com/shop. Thank you so much for buying our stuff, you guys. A lot of great things over there for you, and it supports what we do and helps keep us doing it. So thank you very much. Also, look how good this looks. It looks gorgeous. This is without, oh, I guess I got most of it, but without the finish, it looks nice. But with the finish, it looks gorgeous. I am so happy. I gave the primer overnight to dry, and then every part got a little bit of buffing with my Scotch-Brite pad. That way all the surfaces are nice and smooth for the paint. And for the paint look that I'm going for, I want to match the look that Harrison got when he painted one of these. Some really great layering metallic paints, but he used urethane paints, which are very durable. I'm going to try and duplicate that look with model paints. And I'm going to start by base coating everything with a silver. And I'm going to put on 3 good layers here. I'm going to give a good hour of drying time between each layer of the silver. That's what it says on the bottle, so I'm gonna make sure it has plenty of time to dry. I wanna make sure there's enough paint there that I don't accidentally sand through it later. Yes, I'm gonna sand this paint. Once the silver dried, I wanted to make sure it was nice and protected, so I put on a couple of good coats of clear, and then I let all of that dry completely overnight. Today is a new day and everything appears to be nice and dry, very shiny. Now it's time to add our next and final layer of color. This is gonna go over everything. I'm doing a darker metallic, going with gunmetal on this. And I'm just gonna spray it over every single piece, one good layer. I don't need more than that. Then I'm gonna let it dry for like an hour. Our gunmetal paint seems to be dry. It's been about an hour. Now it's time to do a really fun but subtle weathering technique. I've got some 2000 grit sandpaper here, really, really high grit. And what I'm gonna do is gently and slowly sand down areas where there would be more wear and tear on the edges until I get down to the silver paint I put on earlier. And I'm just gonna do this in areas that would get a lot of wear and tear. The thumb pulling this hammer back would totally wear this away and make it a lot shinier. Now I wanna be really careful and slow and gentle here, because if I sand all the way down through the clear, the silver, the primer, the plastic, well then I've sort of defeated the whole purpose. I did use a gray primer and the plastic is gray, so if I do chew all the way through it, it's not the end of the world. It'll just be gray and not silver. However, I'm going to try very hard to make sure I don't do that. And the effect, like I said, very subtle, but it helps sell the story that this thing has been used quite a bit. And I'm trying to focus on areas where I know it would be getting more wear and tear, places that are gonna rub against stuff or come in contact with other things. This is what I'm going for here, and I'm pretty happy with how it looks. There are a lot of different paint chipping techniques, but this one gives you a lot of subtle control, more so than like hairspray chipping, or if I had tried to put a tiny little bead of masking fluid on there, like toothpaste or latex. You do have to be extremely careful though. Even though this is such a fine grit, it's really easy to chew all the way down to the primer. So I'm just taking my time and try to tell a story here. And I'm being really gentle about this. I could add more if I want later. So I'm just doing a little bit and then building on it. I'm just cleaning up my work here with a paper towel, kind of buffing everything. And I gotta tell you, I'm really happy with how this turned out. Very subtle, but like really, it really sells this piece. I'm excited. This is gonna be protected a little bit. One more coat of clear over everything to make sure my work is nice and secure in there, and then we can let that dry. Some of the pieces don't need any paint because they were cast with metal powder in them. They were cold cast, and I can use a very fine steel wool to buff that metal that's in the outer layer of the resin and get a real metallic finish. This is very hard to simulate. It's a very genuine finish. It looks really good. I think these are bronze, these parts here, and then our casings are brass, and I can do the same thing with those. Just give it a gentle buffing. If you buff too hard, you can chew through that back down to the plastic. I don't want that. But a gentle buffing to bring out that really cool and genuine metallic finish. And you can buff it as much as you want. This is before buffing over here, and this is after. You can get some metal polish if you want and really make this shine.
Lights on.
Lights on? My magnets pulled all the shavings down there and made a connection. Look at that. All right, fixed it. Actually, you know what? I could probably take this whole thing out still. Yeah, there we go. Much better. This has been buffed with steel wool, but the metal polish, this stuff here will really make it sing. This is a really fun thing to do. I love cold casting so much. You do have to be careful, like I said, you can still chew through that finish, but this is less aggressive than that steel wool. So we can push a little harder and get a really, really shiny result. That looks the part. Ah, it's so good. Finally, all of our pieces are ready for assembly, and I can't wait to put them all together. Ah, this is so exciting. I just have to figure out how they all go together. And fortunately, our buddy Harrison hooked us up with instructions. Let's get started. A lot of the pieces on here are gonna get screwed together, which is awesome, but some of them require glue, so I'm mixing up some 5-minute epoxy here to get those parts put together. The epoxy is awesome because it gives me that 5 minutes to work, so I don't have to, hurry. But I only have to wait 5 minutes for it to set up. Just a little bit of glue in here. That's really all it takes. Oh, I don't know which way this goes. Let me check my diagram. That one faces that way. Perfect. There we go. We'll just set that aside so it cures. Next piece is here. There we go. And then make sure this is nice and snug in there. There, that's a satisfying click. Nice. You can set that aside and then, whoops, glue one more part right here. I made sure to sand all these parts before adding any glue to make sure that the glue is going to stick to the plastic and not just the paint. And this little part here is keyed so that this can only go on one way, the correct way. Just like that. Oh, that is satisfying. All right, I'll let these parts cure. This piece will eventually get glued in there, but before I do that, I think I want to install that part with the screw included in this awesome screw kit. Vacuum formed, bubble wrapped, and everything. This little fella, and it's going to rotate around this, so I need to drill that a little bigger, and then I need to thread this hole, so that'll go in there. Just enlarging this hole carefully. Hopefully our screw now can fit through there. Oh, it's still too snug. Gonna go a little bigger. Careful, careful. There we go. So it should be able to rotate around that. Perfect. And then this one, this hole needs to be a little bigger. And then the hole on the other side is what gets tapped with our 440 tap. Okay, so this can go where it needs to go. This can go through both of those and then get threaded into our hole on the other side. I'll tighten that with a driver in a little bit, but now this piece can pivot and it will let the cylinder pop open, I think, once it's all done. I took this apart for the installation. Got more 5-minute epoxy on this. And I'm checking and double checking that this is going in the correct way, because having to remove this part would be a real bummer. There we go. That guy's in there, and while I have some glue, I can install some of these other parts. This little sight here doesn't take much, and I don't want to have a ton of squeeze out to deal with. And again, this could go either way, and I am checking my reference over there to make sure that it's going in the correct orientation. Perfect. Same thing with this guy. It definitely goes that way. I know for sure. Oh, like a glove. These pieces have cured, and it's time for the next round. I've modified this acid brush a little bit with just some scissors to be able to get the glue down in this trench here without getting it everywhere else. There we go. I did practice this a couple times, so I think I'm gonna be okay. Yes. Oh, that's so satisfying. I will probably clamp or tape this together. There we go. Whew, let it cure. Step away, walk away. It's good. Okay, good. It is trigger time. It fits in there nice and snug. I had to sand it a little bit so that it could move and fit in there. And this moves, you can pull it. There's a tiny little spring here. It goes right there. And the trigger can go like that, and then it's all retained with a pin that's just friction fit in there. Oh yeah, there we go. In we go! And the trigger, boop, 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 pew, 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 pew. Awesome. This is starting to get very real. This guy just gets held on with a trio of screws. Nice and snug. There's just something so satisfying about using real screws instead of gluing it. I could take this apart if I want to. Oh man, it looks so good. There we go, the glue's all dry on that. I can install this spring and the lever. Working as intended, all right. Moving on, I do have a little more gluing to do. This piece goes here, and I've installed these pins that came with the kit, and that'll hold it in place, but then I'm gonna glue it. The pins are doing all the work here, and the glue is basically just holding the piece in place. So these are very necessary. This is a butt joint. Butt joints are not very strong, hence the pins. And these will be very snug on purpose. Oh yeah. A little squeeze out, and then I'll let this fully cure. Give it a good half hour to cure. Time to install our emblems. More 5-minute epoxy here. I thought I was done with glue, but no, never done with glue. I did label these so I know which one goes in which side. In case you couldn't tell, I've been putting a lot of thought into this, mostly while I was waiting for paint to dry. So this is the left side. That's the left emblem. And it fits in just like that. Up, there. Oh, like that. Perfect. Up next is the hammer, and it looks like we have an axle that goes in there. That should go in there, and that screws into it from both sides. And like that. Hammer installed. And I don't think it's meant to move, but it looks great. This joint here is almost the same, but it's meant to actually rotate, which is very exciting. The axle can go in there, nice and snug. And then just tighten these guys up. And the other side. I might actually take this apart and grease it so that it can open nicely. We'll see though. Yeah, it's pretty snug. I can loosen that a tiny bit. Yes. And that'll close. Just like that. It's working. The next thing to install is this metal rod. And to glue it in place, I'm using JB Weld. This is their quick version, similar to the 5-minute epoxy. It cures in about the same time, but it's really great for metal. Since this piece I'm gluing is metal, that's what I'm going for. And I only need a tiny bit. And I don't want any to squeeze out and touch the cylinder to keep it from rotating. So I'm gonna try and keep this as tidy as possible. And then, this is important, I sanded the end of this so it'll grip onto that glue really well. And this needs to go in here first. I think it just goes in gently like that. It doesn't want to go down. There's just an air bubble in there. I'll just hold it. Just hold it for 5 minutes. I took the rest of the gun off here so I could handle this a little better. Speaking of handles, this is getting attached. The hole I drilled through here to hold this block of wood earlier, I'm going to use that to attach it with a screw. I've got a 1/4 screw that should be nice and solid to attach it in there. There it is. That red wood looks so good. Oh, that's good. And then these two go in this way. Oh, it feels so good. Butt plate goes on. We are almost done, everybody. This is so exciting. That lip is a little bit of an overhang, but that's how it's meant to be, so we're good there. A little worried that I made my handle too small, but we're in good shape. The glue on there seems to be all cured, and there is a screw to hold that all in place. In you go. Nice and secure. Still spins. I can put this back together. This thing is so ridiculously big. The other side. Yep, that rotates. Oh, it closes. Oh, and I have a stand. Oh, so good. Goes like that. The stand I actually made in a video for our Extra Credit Club. If you're a member, you can go check that out. And if you're not a member, we'll have a link below where you can go find out how to join. Wow, this is awesome. There is still one more step though. It's just a little too clean. Time to do one pass weathering, just a wash over the whole thing, and that should do it. It's so cool! To dirty this up a little bit, I'm using these water mixable oil paints. You can thin them a little bit with water, which is awesome. And then I'm just sort of putting it everywhere, and I'm gonna wipe it off. I'm going for not too much of a dirty look. I am covering it. Obviously, it looks like I'm just making a huge mess, but I'm gonna pull most of this off. I just wanna make sure I get it down in there in all the crevices and details. But then I'm just gonna wipe most of it away. That knurling looks really good with a little bit of the sort of grime down in there. I put a clear coat over my paint job here. I found that these oil paints with certain other paints that they go on can strip them, and that clear coat protects that from happening. It was a real bummer thing. I was painting Raised Blaster, went to weather it, and it stripped the paint all the way off down to just the bare plastic. That was a sad day, but I learned an important lesson. So now I'm basically just cleaning this poorly. Just leave a little grime in there, just a little bit. Just a little, that's all it takes. That's what I'm going for there, just a little bit of grime, makes some contrast for us and helps really show the wonderful details in here, or like these scratches I added, they got a little dirt in them. That's fabulous. This is gonna be exciting. Especially all the details on the emblem there. I want to make sure I get that paint down into those details. It's also going to soak into the grain a little bit on this handle, darken the wood a little bit, and then magic. This is the magic trick that prop makers get to do. It looks so cool. That darker paint goes down into the crevices compared to this, which is far, far too clean. That's what we want right there. Oh, and also, if you're new, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and of course, hit the bell so you get a notification when we have new videos. I don't know what we're making next, but I'm sure it's gonna be really, really cool, and you don't wanna miss it. Oh man, that looks awesome. A little final weathering on the giant bullets here, and the Samaritan is all done. Whee! It wants to go towards its friends. The good news is that it got adhesive on it, so it picked up a ton of stuff from the floor. Oops. Ah! Done. The glue. The glue wasn't cured yet, you guys. Classic Bill impatience right there. Gotta glue that back in. All right, this needs to go in here first, I think, before it gets glued in. That didn't hit the glue or the floor. I kind of caught it with my foot. Oh, these cold cast parts look so good. Until I scratch it. Oh, it looks fine. Damn it. Just so excited right now. And two of the ones on the cap here are connected with a wire. Just making sure these batteries are exposed. I'm gonna do it again. You've got to be kidding me.
He's back.
This is no joke. That car alarm has been going off on and off for about the last 3 hours. And it's been off for about half an hour, which was great. But now it's back.
Keep it together. Keep it together.